Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you Romal Tune. For years, I struggled to find the clarity of purpose in my life and the single-minded focus that I had when I was an athlete. You know, it just felt like I was working hard, but not really getting any closer to where I wanted to go. And to be honest, I really didn't even know or have a clear vision on where I wanted to go. Then I discovered a powerful 4-step blueprint that I began to apply to my life, and it changed everything. Now, every morning, I'm excited to attack the day because I have a clarity of purpose and I have confidence in my plan and I have peace of mind in knowing that I'm back on that path to elite success. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can use this 4-step process to recreate the key elements in the life of an elite performer so you can regain that clarity of purpose and that single-minded focus so that you can both achieve your goals and live a balanced life. I created a free PDF for you outlining the 4-step Reveal Your Path Blueprint for Success. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/blueprint. That's jimharshawjr.com/blueprint to get instant access to that free PDF. Romal is the son of a drug-addicted single-parent mother. He found his way out of poverty and graduated from Howard University and Duke School of Divinity. He became a minister, a sought-after speaker, and social entrepreneur. Outwardly, he was successful, but inside, he was battling the trauma and emotional brokenness caused by his upbringing. After reconciling with his mother, she died of lung cancer. Romal then endured his second divorce. Questioning his faith and will to live, he made a choice to examine his life and seek counseling. In his book titled Love is an Inside Job, he shares his process of applying therapy and faith to anger, shame, and self-doubt. No longer carrying the emotional weight, he now empowers others to stop living a life hindered by the past by helping them heal their stories. Romal is now a global leader who takes individuals and institutions from setbacks to success by using the power of story. And for the listener, as usual, if you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, or if you'll hear something you like, but you don't have a time to jot it down, make sure you grab your copy of the action plan from this episode. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. Romal, welcome to the show.
Jim, thank you for having me on. That was a great bio. You need to send me that.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? It's good stuff, man. It's, you know, what an amazing story. I hope that whets the appetite of the listeners. So let's start with this. Why don't you tell us just sort of a little bit about that bio? Tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and sort of a 30,000-foot view of how you got from there to here.
Yeah, the 30,000-foot view of my story. Well, it's funny when I hear people mention minister, and every now and then someone will call me reverend, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, because I don't use the title much when I'm out speaking. Most of my speaking engagements and even my writing is not in that context. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I grew up in Northern California, Bay Area. I would say that because we moved a lot. Growing up in poverty, we moved when we couldn't pay the bills. I am also a military veteran, served in the Army as a medic during Gulf War Desert Storm.
Wow. Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Went on to Howard University, graduated from there. Top of my class. I was preparing for medical school. So I studied nursing and biology. People always say, why nursing? Because I wanted to get in a hospital before I became a doctor. And I knew that the School of Nursing got kids into hospitals to do some work. And so thus nursing and biology. Then worked as a clinical research associate for a pharmaceutical company with phase 3 studies while I was preparing for the MCAT. decided I wasn't going to go to medical school and went on to Duke University to study religion. Again, graduated top of my class. I keep mentioning that because that's a big deal because I was a failing high school student, and that's why I ended up in the Army. My grades weren't good enough for me to get a scholarship running track. So went on to Duke, graduated. I've worked as a political strategist on all kinds of campaigns, from presidentials to governor's Senate races, congressional races, and then started my own company, CSA Strategies, organizing and mobilizing communities around education issues and stuff like that. And then wrote my first book just over 4 years ago, and that changed my life. And I've been on the road ever since, speaking in the U.S. and abroad. And now I'm on book 2, which just released yesterday. Love is an Inside Job. And it came out, it debuted at #1 on Amazon. So we were excited about that. And my girlfriend and I, soon to be fiance, went out to dinner last night. She brought me flowers, Jim. And I was like, I don't even know what to do with these. And I was like, how do you hold flowers? And I kind of held them like an Olympic torch while
That's
she took
good.
the picture.
Yeah. So are we finding out on the podcast before you actually propose to your girlfriend?
That is breaking news. She doesn't know it, but
okay.
It's happening Saturday morning.
Okay. It's this coming Saturday?
This coming Saturday.
Okay. So for the listener, you will hear this after that's already happened. So you can break the news. So it's not news because I record these and then I release them at a later date. So all right, so that's already happened for the listener as you're on the treadmill or driving on your commute listening to this. Romal, tell us about growing up. Sounds like you had some trauma and some challenges in your early childhood.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff I talk about in Love is an Inside Job. Like I said, we moved a lot, single parent household. My dad was in the military when he met my mom. He was a Marine. My mom was 17. So she had me at a young age, and she went on to go to school and stuff, but then she became an alcoholic and a substance abuser by the time I was probably in about sixth or seventh grade. And we lost everything. She started calling in from work and wasn't paying the bills. And next thing you know, I was living on the floor at my grandparents' house, and she would go missing because of her addiction. And I used to go into my grandfather's bedroom, and, they had a shed in the back. He grew vegetables and stuff, and on the other side of it was the shed. And I would just sit in his window and look at all of our stuff and daydream about maybe one day we would get our life back. That didn't happen for many years later, when my mom finally got off drugs before she passed of lung cancer. But man, there were some tough times. There were times when I literally had to panhandle to get home from school. And I was in around the 6th grade. She would give me $3, and that meant I had to choose $1.50 to get to and from school, and it was $1.50 for lunch. And so if I chose lunch, I was going to have to get far enough from the school to ask people for change so I could get home. And those, among other experiences, began to have an impact on my self-worth and my self-esteem, and even who I believed I could become in the world. The people who would cross the street when they saw me or cut their eyes at me and, kind of shame me. But then there were always the folks who would smile and make eye contact and ask me, how much do I need to get home? And it was $1.50. And that $1.50 sometimes would cost me my dignity. And so, as an adult, I had to revisit those stories and redeem my self-worth and my self-confidence from those experiences so that I didn't define myself by them. It was a inner city kid story growing up, hanging out with the wrong crowd. Most of it was for survival, specifically food and clothes and money, like for school, because the kids who got in the free lunch program got laughed at and picked on. So you didn't want to go get the pink card, which signified you were poor. So, it was a tough childhood in many respects. A lot of verbal abuse, told I wasn't going to become anything, wasn't going to amount to anything. And then a few times I had a teacher in 10th grade who was my math teacher. And like you, Jim, I think he was a wrestler because he was a pretty stocky guy. And I was a class clown, which was primarily because I needed attention. And one day he walked up and he stood over me and he just stared and he stuck out his hand to shake my hand. And he grabbed my hand with such force and looked me in the eyes. And he said, "I'm going to need you to be quiet in my class. Do you think you can do that?" And from the grip he had on my hand, I sensed he meant it. And so I decided to be quiet. But that teacher invited me over to his home one day while he was cutting his grass. And we sat on the stairs. And he said, "You know, you're smart. If you just get your attitude together, you could do something with your life." And that was the first time anyone ever told me I was smart. I was a failing student then. And the second time was in the Army. And drill sergeant. I was soldier to cycle, which basically is the honor graduate, and had to give a speech. And drill sergeant said, "Romal, you're smart as hell, but you have absolutely no military bearing." I didn't know what military bearing was, but I was like, this man just called me smart. And I did graduate at the top. So over the course of time in the Army, I started to believe in myself because I was doing well. And that led me to apply to college. And next thing you know, 4 years after the Army, an honor graduate, magna cum laude. But a lot of work. I had to do a lot of work on myself to get there.
So you had this, this defining story that you grew up that sort of surrounded you and was sort of placed upon you. And you had a couple of people tell you you're smart, but by and large, you said sometimes that $1.50 just, it cost you your dignity trying to get home from school. And every person listening has a story, right? Their story is unique to them. How do you deal with that? How do you break that? I talk a lot about limiting beliefs, and for the listener, you may have, if you haven't, I would recommend listening to episode 139, where I talk about having a cognitive conversion. It's about breaking these limiting beliefs that we have in ourselves. How, Romal, were you able to break these limiting beliefs and break out of this story that you had told to you and probably built your life around and your psychology around? How were you able to break out of that?
You're exactly right. It's really about, all of us have our stories, and typically the dominant messages we receive override the positive messages. So if your life is built around an environment of people who are trying to use negative comments to get positive results, it just doesn't work. You're never going to get positive outcomes from negative feedback. But the overriding messages kind of outweighed anything that was good that someone said about me. And that created the life limiting beliefs, my doubts, my fears, my anxieties, who I believed I couldn't become, what I believed I couldn't do. I talk about in Love is an Inside Job that all of those feelings are tied to stories about you that you accepted as true and never questioned. So that fear is rooted in a first experience of fear. Those anxieties are tied to stories. Those, life-limiting beliefs and what you think you can't do started somewhere, and you accepted it as true and continue to live into it in this present moment. And so what Love is an Inside Job does is take people on a journey through my life experiences with the hope that they will begin to look at their own. And I share a lot of these stories that created these life-limiting beliefs, and how revisiting them, because no one likes to revisit, things that hurt, right? But I always tell people you don't revisit it to remember what happened. You revisit it so that you are able to remember it differently, to take back your self-worth from it, to redeem your identity from it, and who you can become in the world. Because the things that happen in your life do not have the right to define the rest of your life. And the only way to pull those things up by the root is to revisit those narratives and assess, what impact is this still having on how I see myself? And then disconnect who you are now from what happened then, because it was a moment in your life, but it doesn't define the rest of your life. You have deep meaning and purpose, and you're probably already amazing and you shun it. But you need to lean into the fact that you're already good enough.
And it's interesting to hear you talk about this, because you talk about this, when you were younger, you had to panhandle for money, and this $1.50 that you had to get home, and you felt like you had to give up your dignity to do that. And from the outside looking in, for me, it seems like a different way to tell that story, or a different way to sort of reflect back on that story is, gosh, you were independent, you were persistent, you had to be resilient to be able to do this over and over. You were resourceful. These are all things that, from the outside looking in, that could be ways to look at that story. But certainly when you're experiencing that, you experience that in a different way. How do you go from experiencing it and then going, okay, I'm now grown up, I'm older, and I look back at this and I retell this story. What are the steps, or what's the process? Like, because I know the listener is sitting there going, okay, Jim, I get it. Romal's talking about this, and I have these sort of memories of my own past, and I grew up poor, or I grew up rich, or grew up poor, so I didn't have many things at my disposal. I grew up rich, so I was spoiled, so that's why I can't break through the next level. Whatever, we all have these stories. Like, how did you go about actually the physical, like the steps to doing that? I mean, is it telling the story? Yeah. Is it journaling? Is it, you talk about counseling and examining your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So you're right. You can look back at it and say, wow, the resilience, the tenacity. But yeah, when you're 12, you're not in panhandling. You're not thinking, man, I am resilient.
Sure.
And I'm persevering. You're thinking like, why is life this way? And why is this happening to me? I didn't do anything.
Right.
But as an adult, I think the process for me started with, I had a lot of success when I started my company 15 years ago doing consulting and strategy. And I think my internal belief was that if I were successful, if I had enough stuff and enough money, it would override the pain that I was feeling inside, that I would eventually feel like I'm good enough, that I matter, that I'm significant, because there would be evidence. And so in essence, I was trying to solve an internal problem with external means. That the assumption was that these things outside of me will fulfill or heal the things that are going on in me. And it didn't work. When my mom died, I started questioning, who am I? I'm this quote unquote successful person. I own a couple of homes. I have nice cars and stuff, and I'm buying art now. And but that's not the whole story. There's a part of me that I've hid from the world because I've been afraid of being shamed. And the times where I tried to tell my story, I was shamed in the beginning because I didn't see it as a tool to empower others. But the process, Jim, is really, there's several steps to it. I think there's first the awareness that, hey, there are some parts of my story that hurt, and I've tried to suppress them and move on and just be resilient and prove people wrong and build a better life. And I'm aware of it, but awareness is different from acknowledgement. And as my therapist would tell me, he says, awareness is like you're walking through the grocery store and you see someone but you don't feel like talking, so you go the other way. But acknowledgement, which is the next step, is that you're aware of the broken places that you have tried to, self-correct for or try to heal through other means. But now you acknowledge like, hey, this still hurts, and this is still impacting me. It's showing up in my behavior and my attitude. It's even showing up in my drive to succeed. And that I'm mostly trying to succeed because I want to prove people wrong, or I'm trying to succeed because I want attention, or it's still external. Good success is a little different. It's not so much about proving people wrong. It's about proving the people right who believe in you. It's about letting flow from what in you, a manifestation of that outside of you. So any good that you produce is evidence of the good that's already in you. So you have the acknowledgement, you have the awareness of the past hurt, you have the acknowledgement of not only do I see it, I'm going to acknowledge that it's still there and that it still has an impact that I've tried to avoid. And then you have the affirmation. Even though that happened and even though I see it, I'm going to affirm who I am now rather than define myself by what happened back then, because I'm not my past and I'm not my pain. I'm good. I'm talented. I'm gifted. I'm a good person. I desire to do good in the world. I'm successful not because of what happened to me, but in spite of it, and because it's evidence of the good that is in me. And then after the acknowledgement and the affirmation, the next step is action. And the action is, how do I create in myself a mentality that's not rooted in these self-defeating thoughts or life-limiting beliefs? And those actions are things like journaling, things like forgiveness, which is a powerful tool, and therapy. In Love is an Inside Job, I talk about the power of therapy and how, I shunned therapy, as a lot of men do, thinking that it was a sign of being weak or that I couldn't handle the challenges in life, when the reality was that that wasn't true at all. So you have awareness, Jim, you have acknowledgement, you then affirm who you truly are, and then you take action to sustain the positive beliefs and doing those things that are healthy for you. I meditate daily. I also believe in physical fitness. Keeping your body right helps keep your mind strong. I journal, and, the journaling happened to turn into a book. And then forgiveness. And, I've had to deal with forgiveness at a lot of levels, and forgiving myself first for defining myself by these past pains, and then forgiving others.
Romal, I ask all of my guests to share habits and things that they felt like have helped them be successful. And it's interesting that you talk about having a therapist, you talk about meditation, you talk about journaling, and these are all common themes. And for the listener, you've heard me talk about this before if you listen to very many episodes, but this is once again an example of what I have coined the phrase productive pause. And a productive pause is defined as a short period of focused reflection around specific questions that leads to clarity of action and peace of mind. And when we do this productive pause, it helps us gain exactly the stuff that we're looking for, is that clarity of action and the peace of mind. And it's interesting to hear you talk about that, Romal, in just such plain terms, that these are things that you've done that have helped you overcome and also build an incredible life, an incredible business, an incredible brand, incredible personality. Now you're speaking all over the country. Can you tell us about the title of the book? Love is an Inside Job. Where does that come from?
Yeah, so Love is an Inside Job came from some of the stories I tell, especially about dating. I've been divorced actually twice. And I realized that right before I had a girlfriend at one point, and we were breaking up, and she made this comment. She said, "Romal, you're a good person, but you're not emotionally available." Now, I had no idea what she meant. I didn't know what emotionally available meant. So I literally went and Googled it. And I found out, she's talking about feelings. And I wasn't conditioned in my upbringing to feel. And then I had a girlfriend after that, because she was not the first person to say this emotionally unavailable thing to me. And I decided, okay, maybe it is me. Maybe I'm the one that keeps sabotaging my life. And maybe it's because I don't know how to feel and I don't have any empathy. And another relationship happened, and this ex-girlfriend would always say, "Romal, do you love me?" And I would say, "Of course I do." And then she'd come with the trick question. She'd say, "Why?" And that's like asking me, why is water wet?
Right. Yeah.
I'm like,
why is food good?
Right. I was like, I just do. And the reality was, I could not articulate for her why I loved her, because if she were to ask me another question, "Romal, do you love yourself?" I would have said, "Sure." And then she would have said, "Why?" And I would have had nothing. I didn't know why I loved myself. I think for me, the title was Love is an Inside Job, came from the fact that I had to realize that with all of the success of all of the things, I had temporary happiness, but I didn't have sustainable, consistent joy and peace of mind. I yearned and longed for peace of mind, to stop having to prove myself, to eventually feel like one day I will feel whole and enough. And success alone didn't deliver on the promise. I didn't do the other part of the work, which was dealing with me. And I had to begin to answer, why don't I love myself? And the reality was, there was the wounded child still within me, which is why I stayed busy all the time, constantly going, constantly working, because the still moments, I had to wrestle with this inner wounded child asking, do you love me? And I knew my answer was not yet. I haven't accomplished enough yet to love all of me. And I had to realize that everything that I was trying to go get and become was not solving for this sense of not fully loving myself. And so I went to therapy and I started dealing with the stories that led me to believe I wasn't worthy of love and led me to believe I wasn't good enough, and how all of my motives to succeed were trying to fill that void. The success was good and there was nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't going to give me the peace of mind and fulfillment that I was truly looking for, the thing that I could not purchase. I love traveling, and that was temporary happiness, but I wanted joy and I wanted wholeness and peace. And through meditation, through therapy, through journaling, and through being man enough to say, hey, if a real man takes responsibility, owns his failures, makes healthy decisions to make his life better so that he could also make the lives of others better, then shouldn't I, as a man who is all of those things, make my own decisions about the importance of therapy if I want to be healthy and whole? I should be man enough to make that decision, because a real man doesn't let other people make decisions for him. A real man doesn't yield to peer pressure and shaming and what other people think that he should do. As a man who stands on his own 2 feet, I desire to be healthy so that I could be healthy for other people. And this is a requirement.
Tell me about a time you failed. Time where you failed, and as a result, you just felt that hopelessness, that self-doubt, that overwhelming sense of self-doubt that just kind of holds us back, and how you're able to overcome it. Maybe that's something that you've already told us, or maybe it's something totally different.
Yeah, there was that divorce thing that I mentioned. I think, if anything, in divorce, I failed my children. I think there was that. And so there's the life stuff, the real life stuff. Family is the real life stuff, right? Family and friends. On that side of life, I would say I failed at maintaining healthy relationships. And that was because, one, I didn't know what healthy looked like, and I was quite selfish. And I couldn't see the world beyond my own self-interest, and the impact that would have on others. And so I had to learn the skills of compassion and empathy, and look beyond myself and think about how my decisions and behavior is impacting other people. My drive to be successful was to show my kids success when all my kids wanted to do was play, and my son wanted to play basketball. That would have been winning, right? To be that dad. I am that dad now. I think you can redeem time, and it's never too late to have a fresh start, as long as you're still here. But on the career side, as a public speaker, I remember once, it was about maybe 7 years ago. I was speaking at this gathering. It was about 2,000 people, and I bombed. And for at least a week, I beat myself up. I was depressed, and I was judging myself, and I was angry with myself. And over time, I had to step back and look at, why was that so terrible? What did I do wrong? And I realized that the reason that it didn't work was because I made that talk about me. I was selfish, and it was kind of like, I'm going to show them how great I am, how good I am. And as a speaker, the key is realizing that it's actually not about you at all, that the audience, they're the heroes, and the speaker is the guide. And I tried to play the hero, and people aren't looking for heroes, they're looking for guides.
Yeah.
And that was a humbling experience. And so now there's not a talk that I prepare to do where I don't first meditate and visualize the outcome that I expect, that I pray for. And then I pray and I'm like, God, humble me so that I can give these people what they need, because they're the heroes in this room and I'm just a guide. Let me focus on being a guide and not let my ego get in the way, because this is not about me. But I had to fall, man, and then learn from that mistake. And the same thing with marriage. With divorce, I learned a lot. I think every failure teaches you something if you're willing to learn the lesson.
And for the listener, I want you to reflect on this for a second. He just shared 2 failures, right? So this is a public speaker who travels around the country, sharing his story, talking about very personal things. And he shared that he's gone through divorce twice. And he just shared with us now that he bombed in a speech. And interestingly, this is not something these are not parts of his story that he tries to hide. These are parts of his story that he shares. He makes these part of his story, and they actually carry him forward rather than holding him back. So I challenge you, the listener, to examine those things that are in your mind and you see them as reasons why you can't, and take the perspective that Romal has and see them as reasons why you can. So, Romal, thanks for sharing that. What action can the listener take, let's say, in the next 24 or 48 hours to start moving towards their goals, to start, telling their story differently?
I think the first step is to stillness. Be still enough to sit down with a pen and paper or with your phone or with your computer and start writing down, what actions do I need to take to become the best version of me that I can possibly become in my lifetime? And then answer questions like, what are the things about me that are holding me back from becoming that person? Which behaviors? And you make a list of those, which attitudes, which beliefs, and you make a list. And then you say, now, what is the course of action I need to take to change each one of these so that I can become the best version of me in my lifetime? Because you only get to do this once. So you might as well set out to have an amazing life internally, in terms of how you feel about yourself, and externally in terms of how you show up in the world and the life that you lead. And that life that shows up in terms of how you lead it flows from the inside out. So you want to start with some journaling. If you're ready, I would encourage finding a good therapist. My therapist calls himself my compassionate witness. And then with everyone who goes to therapy, the whole issue at first is trust. Build the trust and then be courageous enough to be honest. But first you have to be courageous enough to be honest with yourself. I would imagine, listening to you and your show, there are a lot of successful people who are listening. And if you're listening and you're like, man, my life looks amazing, but there are these ouch points that I haven't solved for, maybe sit down and write those things down and be just as intentional about becoming a better you on the inside as you are about the success on the outside. And take those steps. Be confident enough to pursue the level of peace and joy from an internal perspective that you want to see in your external success.
The more I go through life, the more I realize that we all want these external things, right? The job, the house, the car, the family, the whatever, right? And the fame, the fortune, and we all want that. But the thing, and we want to know the steps and the tactics, but it's the internal, it's the steps that we have to take that change us internally. And that's where it all starts. If you fix that, then you figure out the how. You figure out how to get those things that you want, if you even still want those.
The thing is, everything that I'm doing now is definitely at a higher level than I've ever done it before. A lot of the things are the same. I travel the country. I travel internationally speaking and all of that. And I love buying art and fine wines and I even sell art for my nonprofit to send kids to college. But what I find now, Jim, is everything that I'm doing, I love it. And I love my life because I love me. I'm able to be present and enjoy what's around me and enjoy the people who are in my life because I've dealt with my wounded places and I can fully show up in every environment and every interaction fully confident because I truly know me now and I'm not hiding from myself. So I can show up for others and honor my story. And just one last thing, I tell these stories about that some people would say, I can't believe you admit this stuff in public behind a microphone in front of thousands of people. I always tell folks, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it because I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah, right.
And I want to give people permission to own their stories and own their truth so that they can truly go out and be amazing instead of I tell people there's a difference between Facebook happy and real happy. Right?
Yeah.
I
Amen.
genuinely be happy. And I have a friend who was an alcoholic, and he overcame alcoholism, became a C-suite CEO. And one day he was at a party and someone said to him, you've always been a great, fun-loving, happy person. And his response was, I'm finally the person I was pretending to be. In essence, sometimes we're pretending to look like life is amazing and we're enjoying it. And you don't have to pretend to be happy. You don't have to be Facebook happy. You can really enjoy your life and become the person you've been pretending to be and align your internal journey with the external success by turning those wounded places into scars. Because wounds, you just bleed all over people, but scars are evidence of healing. And a part of that healing journey is doing the work.
It's interesting that you bring that up. And sadly, I have two folks that I know. I don't know if I'd call them necessarily close friends, but they're people that I know them fairly well, who have committed suicide just in recent months, and they're very successful people by every means, families and job and the whole bit, and they took their own life because there are these pains that we just don't see. They're behind the mask. So I definitely encourage the listener to understand that it's not just you. If you do have pain and suffering, deal with it. Bring it to the surface. Talk to somebody. Talk to a therapist, and deal with it now before it drives you to do something that some of these folks have done and you can't take back.
And I assure you, everyone who knows this, all of the people I follow and admire in terms of their success, when you do the self-work, you function at such a higher level. Like there's another level of energy and being in the world that you tap into when you do the internal work, when you meditate, when you journal, when you're honest with yourself, when you are physically fit, and all of these things come together to make a whole person. When you have healthy relationships and you spend time with family and you spend time with friends, it elevates the energy level that you function at in the world, because you're living a holistic existence at that point and you're not compartmentalizing your life. So, like I said, the name of the book is Love is an Inside Job. The subtitle is Getting Vulnerable with God, but it's really about getting vulnerable and honest with yourself.
And for the listener, we'll have a link to Romal's book in the action plan, as well as his first book, God's Graffiti, Inspirational Stories for Teens. We'll have links to both of those books in the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. Romal, how about a tool or a technology or something that you feel helps you be more productive? Maybe it's an app, maybe it's a supplement, anything like that you can recommend?
Actually, I was about to make a shake before we got on the phone. I'm a big on my protein shakes. I use Muscle Tech a lot. I know they just got a free promotional, but I do my protein shakes every morning, especially if I don't get a full breakfast. In terms of apps, I'm big on taking notes. Evernote is one that I use, but there is this thing called Go 365. It's actually through my health insurance, and they have this app that pings you about exercising and about nutrition and about, taking walks or jogging and getting physicals. And, I would encourage people to find an app that helps you monitor and stay on top of your health. One of my other favorite apps I use is a meditation app. It's really just the music. I start every day with 20 minutes of stillness and meditation. Sometimes it's what people call transcendental meditation. And sometimes I follow the process that my friend Richard Rohr taught me, where it's really just to empty my mind and to just be fully present. And for 20 minutes of doing absolutely nothing to clear my mind of any thoughts, ideas, things I want to do, and work that needs to get done, and just be still. And I realized, most of the day I am giving myself to the needs and requirements of work and other people. So at the very least, I can give myself 20 minutes of the entire day. Within a 24-hour time period, I owe myself 20 minutes. So good nutrition, meditation, journaling, exercise. There's some good apps out there around meditation and around health, and around keeping track of your life. I even build in time on my calendar for, I'm going to sit and just focus on my girlfriend, soon to be fiance, without my phone. Because once your phone is in your hand, you're actually present, absent. You're in the room, but you're really not there. So we put our phones down and we give each other real attention. Those kind of things help me become the person I truly desire to be in the world, and live into that with intentional actions.
For the listener, we'll have links to everything that Romal just shared with us there. Romal, can you take a minute and just promote yourself? Let us know how we can find you, follow you, etc.
Yeah, I'm on all social media, from Instagram to Twitter to, for those of us over 40, Facebook. I'm on YouTube. Everything is by my name, Romal Tune. That's Romal, last name Tune. So at Romal Tune for any social media, even on my YouTube channel, it's my name. And Love is an Inside Job, Getting Vulnerable with God. You can find it on any major book-selling outlet, Amazon, Barnes, Books A Million. It's everywhere. And hey, we'll be posting my book tour soon on my website, which is romaltune.com. We have some dates up there, but it would be great to connect with you and even some of your audience if I'm in the area.
Great. And again, for the listener, all those links will be in the action plan, jimharshawjr.com/action. Romal, thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on the show.
And thank you for having me. Like I said, I checked out your TEDx, and that was really encouraging and inspiring. And just love what you're doing and how you're equipping people with tools to have an amazing life. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, likewise, Romal. And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.